Alright guys, welcome back to another how to play video, and of course, just like the title and thumbnail said, we're going to be going over Drogoz and this video. I'm sorry this video came out late. I've been very busy, so I had to do all the recording and editing in one day, so that's why it came out a little late. I hope you guys understand, but with that being said, let's get right into it. Drogoz's first ability is his rocket launcher. When you shoot someone directly, it does 850 damage, and as you can see, if I shoot to the side, it does area damage. The area damage isn't much, but you can still hit a decent away from your opponent and still do a little bit of damage. Drogoz's next ability is his salvo ability. When this happens, you load all your rockets in at once, so when you shoot, it will shoot all 6 rockets, all 5, depending on how many you have in your launcher. I always recommend using it as 6. Each one will do 250 damage direct hit and also does area damage, as you can see there. The area damage is bigger for salvo than the regular rocket launcher, as you could see right there. Next up, we have Drogoz's thrust ability. Now what this does is it launches him up into the air and lets him get verticality over his opponents, and it's very useful when you use cards in his deck that enable him to stay flying longer. The final ability we are going to be going over before his ultimate is his fire spit ability. Now what this does is it shoots a fireball like that, and it does 900 damage direct hit, or 900 damage when you explode it with your rocket. If you directly hit one of these people with it, it only does 150, so you always want to be exploding it. It also does area damage. It is a very good ability if you combine it with salvo. As you can see here, I forgot to reload, so it'll only be 5 rockets. But as you see, boom, shoot, like that. You can burn. I missed some of the rockets. It's easier to do when you're above the person, but you can hit someone for over 1,000 damage easy, sometimes even 2,000 damage if you do it correctly. Drogoz's ultimate is an interesting one. When you power it up, it takes a few seconds, and then you get to fly around, and if you hit an enemy, it is a one-shot kill, no matter what health they are at. It is a very useful ultimate, but if you do not use it properly, you will get easily killed because you are kind of slow when you are flying, and you will lose your 1-for-1 trade. You always want to make sure when using his ultimate you get a 1-for-1 trade, but if possible you want to get a nice pick. So you fly in, get a pick, thrust out, get hit, get where the other people can't shoot you. And yeah, it's a very good ultimate if you use it in the right situation. Now we are going to move on to Drogoz's talents. The first one we have is Combustible. Now what Combustible does, it edits the fire spit, so when you hit it, it does the same 900 damage, and it applies knockback as well as 30-second tick damage, as you can see there. It is very good ability. This is good on small maps, for example ice mines, when you can't use Drogoz's verticality and there's a lot of close spaces, because again, AoE damage is very effective. Drogoz's next talent is the one I am going to be using when I play in the gameplay of this video. It is called Fool-a-Sod. I think I'm saying that right. What it does is when you hit an opponent, it does slightly more damage with your rocket, so instead of 850 it does 1063 for example. It is very strong, especially, and it also affects your salvo. So if I go like this, as you can see, it's 313. You can almost one-shot a pip, and if you combine that with the fire spit, you are sure going to one-shot him. Final talent Drogoz has is his Warm Jets talent. Now what this does is when you're in the air, it makes it so you can fly around, you have more mobility, and you are less of a sitting duck. This one is good with maps with high skyboxes. I personally prefer to use Fool-a-Sod, like I said earlier, but Warm Jets is another very good one if you know how to play it correctly. With that being said, let's move on to the gameplay, and while the gameplay is playing, I'll be telling you what items are good as Drogoz, explaining my loadout for him, and telling you who Drogoz is good and weak against.
Alright guys, now that we have gone over his abilities and talents, we are going to be going into the loadout I use as Drogoz. Now, as I said before, I use full Assad, so I'm going to be focusing on that one. But if you guys want my Warm Jets loadout, I'll put that on your screen right now. You can pause the video, take a good look at it if you want. Once you're done looking, you can unpause the video and we will get right into the full Assad loadout. Shortly before we get into the loadout, one last thing I'd like to say is this is just my opinion and what I use. I am not saying this is the best thing to use. I'm just saying what I use in my opinion. So don't feel that you have to use it. If you have something that you don't agree with, leave it in the comments and I'll pin it for other people to see as well. With that being said, the first card I use is Hot Swap at level 3. What this does is it increases my reload speed by 30% for 3 seconds after hitting my opponent with my weapon. Now this is very solid because Drogoz, you only have the 6 ammo and you have to be reloading a lot, especially when you want to use your salvo. So having a quicker reload speed allows you to output way more damage. The next card I use is Apex Predator at level 3. Again, what this does is increase my maximum health by 150. Now, this might not seem like a lot, but you have no clue how many times that slight extra 150, 100 health has gotten me out of a situation where I should have died. So I'm keeping this card in my deck because it saves me countless times, and it's just all around a very solid card. The next card is Decimate, and it increases the explosion radius of salvo by 30% at level 2 where I use it. Now, the reason I use this card is for another card later on in the deck, but the more enemies you hit with salvo, basically what that card does is it reduces the cooldown of salvo, so you can output more damage that way, and if it has a bigger radius, you're going to be hitting more people with it. So that being said, that is why I like to have this card at level 2. This is the card I was talking about earlier. As you can see, it reduces the cooldown of salvo by 1.25 seconds for each enemy it hits. This is my only level 5 card in the deck, but what this does is if I hit all 6 rockets, that takes down the cooldown of salvo by like 7 seconds. Actually, no, more like 8 seconds. It is very, very solid. I recommend running this in almost every single deck that you make for Drogoz. The final card in my deck is Fuel Tank at level 2. Now, what this does is it just adds extra fuel to your booster so you can stay up in the air just a little bit longer. I was with fuel sod, you don't really need to be up in the air terrible amounts. This lets you to be up in the air just the right amount, and it does work better than the one that when you use thrust, it reduces the amount of fuel you'll use in my opinion. So I did some experimenting and I like this card better, so I decided to use it. Same thing as before as with the Loadout, I am just telling you the items I like to use. I'm not saying they're the best items and I'm not saying they're the worst items. I'm just saying these are the items I use because they work for me. Now I'm going to give you 3 and the 4th will be up to you based on the opposing team. Now, obviously, you want to buy Hi-rez. Sorry, I still haven't updated my picture that I use for it. It is now still 250 instead of 300 credits, so just ignore that. But obviously, Drogoz is a damage dealer, so we are going to want Hi-rez to affect all of those that he hits with his AoE damage. Now, the next one I think you should use that I use is Chronos. Now, the reason for this is he has a lot of abilities that have decently long cooldowns, and you can't put all the cooldown cards in his deck because that just wouldn't be a solid deck. So I think Chronos is very effective when it comes to sorting out, lowering his cooldowns. and you focus the card cooldowns on what the main focus of your talent is about. Finally, the last item I would recommend is morale boost. Now, I know I said it earlier, but Drogoz' ultimate is make or break, and honestly, it is one of the best ultimates of the game if you use it properly. So, the more you get it, the more you use it, the better it is for your team. Instantly taking one of the opponents out on the other team, making it a 5v4 is so huge, especially if it is one of their point tanks. With that being said, those are the 3 items I think you should use as Drogas. Feel free to use others and make up the 4th for yourself. Now let's move on to who Drogas is good and bad against. Alright guys, now we are moving on to who Drogoz is good against. First up, we have Torvald, Fernando, Inara, and Makoa. Now, the reason for this is because they are tanks and they have low mobility. Now, the problem with low mobility going against Drogoz is that you get easily, and I mean easily bursted down because he can track you very easily. The more mobility you have, the harder it is for him to hit his projectile rockets. And then the last one we have that he is good against is a support, and it is Pip. Now, Pip, I would say Meldamba also falls into this, but Pip suffers from it a little bit more because Meldamba has his stun. But Pip can hit it's hard for Pip to be able to hit Drogoz because of him being able to fly and how Pip's a projectile, so it's hard to hit something above you with a bobbing projectile. With that being said, let's move into who Drogoz is weak against. Drogoz is weak against a lot of hitscan characters like Knessa, Victor, Leon, and Tyra. They all have good magazine size and very, very good hitscan. So that is why Drogoz is weak against them, because while he's flying, he is a very easy target. Now, the one I want to focus on is Androxus. Androxus can fly around with Drogoz, which is why he is the biggest counter to Drogoz, and Androxus is really, really good because he's hit scan, he can fly around, stay at the same level as Drogoz. With that being said, that is it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. That's been Captain Pickles, and I will see you guys in the next video.